Hello and welcome to the Extreme Sports Performance Podcast. My name is Ryan Blake, I'm the founder of Extreme Sports Performance and the host of this show. This podcast exists to explore what actually sustains high-level performance over time in action and adventure sports. Not hype, not shortcuts, and not peak moments taken out of context. Extreme Sports Performance is built around a durability-first approach. We focus on how athletes train, recover, structure their seasons, and make decisions under fatigue and unpredictable high-cost environments without sacrificing health, longevity, or enjoyment of the sport. The aim of this show is simple: to extract real-world transferable insights from athletes and coaches who had lived the demands of their sport, what worked, what didn't, where things broke down, and ultimately what held up over time. Today I'm speaking with Daniel Patakfalvi, an ice swimmer operating in some of the most demanding conditions the human body can face. This episode shifts slightly deeper into physiology, looking at what happens when the body is pushed into extreme environments and how those responses can be understood, trained and controlled. We get into what actually happens in the first moments of cold exposure, how the body adapts over time, where breakdown begins, and what this can teach us about managing stress, recovery and performance more broadly across action and adventure sports. This is less about extremes for the sake of it, and more about what extreme environments reveal about how the body works under pressure. Right, let's get into it. Daniel, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on. Can you let the listeners know who you are and what you do, please?
My name is Daniel Patakfalvi. I'm an ice swimmer from Hungary, currently one of the leading members of the Hungarian team, and we do competitive ice swimming.
So there might be people listening wondering what you mean by that. So for people who don't know, what is ice swimming and what does it actually demand from the body and the mind?
All right, so basically it's the winter version of normal swimming. There are two different distinctions here. There is winter swimming, which is below 10 degrees Celsius water, and then there is ice swimming, which is below 5 degrees Celsius water, and where it gets really interesting if someone swims in sea, in very north or in very south, where the water is salty, so it can basically go below zero, so sub-zero in temperature. That's actually pretty freaky. And yeah, this is what we do. There are the two main categories, and within the categories there is normal sprint swimming from 50 meter, 100 meter, then there is middle distances, 250 meters and 500 meter freestyle, and then there is long course, which is 1 kilometer, or the romantic dream of most ice swimmers is the ice mile itself. So you swim a whole mile under 5 degrees water temperature. So that's the sport of ice swimming, and there are two international federations of it. The one is International Ice Swimming Association. If someone goes to internationaliceswimming.com, they can find everything about it, rules and regulations, all the national federations, all the athletes who ever competed, registered competitions under this federation. And then there is another one, International Winter Swimming Association, where you can find them at iwsa.me, like me. And they also organize competitions. The main difference is that one of them strives for the Olympic aim. So basically, this year in February we had the European Open Championships in Italy, Molveno, and the place is located right in between Corinthia and Milano, where the Winter Olympic Games was. So we have been a demo sport or demonstration sport for the IOC committee and for the European Aquatics. There were people observing us, and hopefully with that initiative. At one point, swimming is going to be one of those unique sports, which I tend to believe there are not too many. It's going to be present in both Olympic Games in the summer and in the winter as well.
Brilliant. Well, we'll come on more to the development of the sport a bit later on. I just wanted to dive into more of the physiology and the mental side of things. So when you get into water that cold, like what happens in the first 30 to 60 seconds when you enter, and like what systems are under the most stress initially?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It really depends on the individual. I would divide at least two levels here. Completely beginner, let's put an intermediate phase, and then there is an advanced phase. So it really depends on how much experience does the individual have. Also, what is the sport background and the health qualities of the individual? Because, for example, someone with high blood pressure, it's really not recommended to do any cold exposure or cold plunge or ice swimming. That's absolutely the reverse effect of it that makes his or her condition even worse. But someone, let's say, with a healthy body, with a general good health conditions, can start ice swimming, and they can also start. I would start with a cold dip, cold plunge, or maybe even cold shower, which I personally really hate. That's one of the worst.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's more painful than swimming itself. But back to the topic. So what happens is that your body get a cold exposure. It generates a natural reaction of defense mechanisms. So your heart rate goes up, the adrenaline kicks in, and obviously there are physical signs what you can see, like there are goosebumps. Some people might have a skin tone change, so it becomes red, and first 60 seconds, that's about it. That's I would say, as a sprint swimmer, which is usually below 60 seconds, it's not a biggie, but I'm talking from an intermediate perspective. So for the beginners, it's quite a stress factor in the beginning. Yeah. What happens if you keep on pushing further? That at one point your body adapts to the physical training or to the environment what you put in in your body, and because of that, it's gonna naturally elevate your stress tolerance. So at one point, it's not gonna be training anymore, but it's gonna be like a normal daily routine. Let's say that's the intermediate and advanced level, and it has really good side effects as well. So, for example, it pumps up the serotonin level. You're gonna feel happy after, and it's naturally increases your immune system. Now, I'm not saying the goal here is to completely eliminate the feeling of coldness, but because that's not possible. But you're gonna gain more endurance towards it, and that's interesting.
Okay, got it. So for those who are kind of unfamiliar to cold water immersion, who've never done this, they would probably initially be thinking, like, how do you manage that initial shock response in real time? Because I'd imagine your breathing, your heart rate, and those who are not familiar with it, maybe the panic they get from it is quite overwhelming. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so as I said before, you put your body into a really stressed environment, and that stress initially it can be very overwhelming at the beginning. And what I recommend to do for beginners, for complete beginners, to have every single time somebody on the side, on the coast or on land, on dry land, to observe them, and we call it the observer or a second, who helps in case if there is an emergency situation or something. So basically, you safe and secure the area where you do the swimming or where you do the dip. I would start with dips. it really depends also on the individual's swimming level as well, because swimming as a skill can vary from zero all the way up to very, very high skill, very, very high speed as well. So if someone can do swimming on a solid basis, as according to the latest rules, what I know, if you can swim under 5 degrees Celsius, 25 meters, then you're officially an ice swimmer. So that's doable for most of the people, I believe. But make sure that the environment is safe and secure. And what causes the stress is what it's like in that area, in that environment. You shouldn't focus on what you cannot control, because that's going to be constant and it's going to be there anyways. What you have to focus on is the things that are actually in your control. And that's one of the things what you just mentioned, and it's really important: breathing. So if you focus on your breathing in and out, it's going to become naturally stress relief for some reason. I don't know. I'm just talking about personal experience. So it reduces your stress, your focus, you get some sort of a clarity, and the panic and that you go, that the whole world is going inside, it eliminates it. So there are different methods of this already. And there is this Dutch guy, Wim Hof, who does something similar. They do cold exposure in different levels, and also not just in water, but they go half naked or in shorts in Antarctica and stuff like that. That's a little different story. And there is this Norwegian or Danish scientist, Dr. Susanne Søberg, who's got a really good book, Swimming in Cold, where she writes science about what to do and how to do. But what we do initially, that's like those are the basic levels. So if you master the basics, then after that you can start with competitive swimming. So basic, or on the other way around, you master competitive swimming. I have the past 2-3 years, I contacted many swimmers, and and they already have the master the skill of swimming really fast and really good, but they don't know how to react to cold, and they actually don't like it. So that's already in our sport. Yeah, so that's the 3 steps. Start as a beginner, always have an observer, control your breathing technique. That's really important. And the environment, once you come out, is also really important. That's the second phase.
Well, that's a great intro and a familiarization for people listening who aren't that savvy to it. So I just wanted to talk to you about adaptation over time. You know, we work with a lot of surfers who surf globally all over the world, and the temperatures they surf in are vastly different, from very warm to absolutely freezing. They do struggle with this a lot as well. So how does repeated cold exposure change the body over time? Like, what actually adapts versus what people think adapts?
Oh, that's actually a good question. So what's happening is, like, after a while, it's not going to be your stress endurance and your tolerance level for the repeated cold exposure goes so high up. It's going to feel like normal conditions after a while. Myself, I'm coming from an environment from CrossFit and martial arts. So there already the stress level is really high, because you're fighting against an opponent or you're fighting against time. And that's how I found actually ice swimming, because I was looking for something challenging, and I found it. That's the good news. But back to the topic. It's going to feel like you're in a familiar environment after a while. The more you repeat it, the more it's going to be like, okay, this is not so bad anymore. At the beginning, I remember my first swim was like, whoa, it was really, really hard.
Yeah.
And then you started with the winter, and by now we have a technique that we start once the weather is getting colder around, well, here in Central Europe, around end of October. And we just go and swim or do a cold dip once or twice a week. So we go into natural lake, and once or twice a week. So the competition season starts in December. By the time end of October, November, we already go with the weather. And by the time we get there to 5 degrees or below 5 degrees, you're already adapted to 14 degrees in the beginning, then 7 degrees, then 8 degrees, and it goes all the way down to below 5. So by the time the season starts, it's basically just a technical routine and a method that you gain from the practice itself. So what I can recommend is that it's much more of a psychological adaptation than a physical one, and it's much more frightening in the beginning as it is in reality. If you go on short tracks, of course. If we are talking about long distance swimming, that's a totally different animal. There is you can't even compare one to another. It's always a different feeling, even for professional swimmers who do it for years and decades, and they always come like the rewarming and then fighting with the afterdrop, and yeah, that's a different story. So as I said, until short distances and until mid distance, it's quite okay to get the cold adaptation without just with the routine, without being frightened. But for the 1 kilometer and for ice mile especially, now that's where the story begins to be a little bit interesting.
Okay. Well, we'll come on to that a bit later. But where is the line between training and tolerance here then? So is this something you can truly train for? Or is it all about just learning to tolerate stress in the cold?
Okay, so there are swimmings what you can train for. So the ones which are in a controlled environment in a pool, 50-meter pool, standard Olympic size pool, or short track pool, 25-meter pool, there are some competitions as well there. You can clearly train for within using the same environment. Basically, you train in a 25-meter or a 50-meter pool, and then after the training, if you are lucky enough to have that kind of facility, then you just go into the cold plunge bath or tub, or if there is like a cold tub.
Yeah.
So that's something that you can truly do. What is harder to train for is the open water swimming in cold, and yeah, lakes and rivers. There is a friend of mine who did a river swim, and he said like that was one of the craziest swim he ever did.
Yeah.
He thought that he's gonna die, but yeah. So there are some really good insights and techniques what you can use on the long distance. For example, when you feel a little bit dizzy, because around 800 meters it can be. I'm lucky because I never had it, but what we usually do is that you start to move your fingers. So let's say you swim freestyle because that's the fastest. Obviously, you want to do the track or the as fast as possible. What you can do is that with each and every stroke, you just make a fist from your fingers, so you can still feel that okay, there is a nerve reaction. So it's not like goofy or loosened fingers, because if it start to be loosened fingers or you feel dizzy or cold, it's better to turn on your back. That's a warning signal. And if you cross your hands like this, then they're gonna pull you out. So there are observers usually, and then there is your second who can pull you out, which is also mandatory in most of the competitions, at least under ISA rules, which one of the federations I mentioned above, is that we have a safety belt. And yeah, so in case of emergency, they pull you out.
Okay, that's really, really interesting. So what I was just about to ask is, where's the breakdown point here then? So at what point does the body start to fail in the cold water? And like, what are the early warning signs that people might miss?
Okay, so I can talk about this from personal experience. One really big warning sign is if you feel that there is something warm in your stomach. So if you feel like you've eaten like a big bowl of warm soup and it's all in your stomach, that's a really big warning sign, because that means that's one of the first signs of hyperthermia. That means the fresh blood from all your extremities, your arms, your legs, went into to cover the internal organs, and that means you have to get immediately out of the water, like as soon as possible, because that's really a big warning sign. As I said before, if you feel like you get lightheaded or dizzy, or you don't feel your fingers, maybe your toes, you can even move your toes just to play with it. Okay, if it's still moving, it reacts to movements, then you're okay, you're good to go. But if you feel lightheaded, and those are warning signs, and then it's better to get out, because even though the sport is aiming for the Olympic Games, at this level, in this cold water, hyperthermia is a real danger. So it can occur. I've never seen somebody frozen out. Thank God. I hope it's gonna stay like that. But it can occur, and in this part of this whole sport, it is still an extreme sport. So yeah,
sure thing. So what happens then when you've done your distance and you finished your swim and you want to recover? So like when you get out, how do you manage your recovery properly? And are there any things that you be really careful about?
Yeah, it's an amazing feeling, by the way, when you get out. So let's separate the things here a little bit, because 50 meter and 100 meter short treks are totally different feeling, because you do a really huge warm up. You, in best case scenario, you already prepared for the season. So that 100 meters of 1 minute, maximum 1.5 minutes. So it's 90 seconds what you're going to spend in water, unless there is a cramp accidentally, like let's say your calf or your biceps cramps up. There is no, the adrenaline kicks in, you do a proper warm-up, you have high rate. Usually we have dry robes on us, so yeah, you coming from a warm environment. The only shock for the system or for your body is when then there are three signatures what they give. Take off your clothes, then you have to take everything off from you what you have except for the goggles and the silicone cap, and then get into the water. Now that's those 5 split seconds when you go into the water, and you actually, the professionals or most of the people put their head in, because once the cold reaches your face, the cold water, that's actually a shock for the system, because I think here is where you have the most temperature sensors on your body. But what we do is that we put our heads in the water, so it won't be like a shock once you start the dive and then you go and start the swim. There is no jumping in ice swimming. It's really important because of 2 factors. One, if you with a warm body jump into 5 Celsius degree water, it can cause a heart attack. So there is no jumping. And the second one is a surface thing. In some pools, the ice is on the surface. So if you jump in, you literally start with a head injury. It might occur.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so there is no jump. So you get into the water on a wooden ladder, basically, and then there is no flip turns, because of you lose your balance really easily because due to the water temperature. So there are no flip turns. We turn like the old school way. So you get in and then you rotate yourself over. It's a pull over, basically. No underwater turns, no flip turns allowed. That makes the sport slightly slower than the normal swimming. As you can imagine, from jumping from a block, it's much faster. But it makes the netto swimming of the 50 meter, because there is no dive in and there is no flip turn. So you cannot swim 15 meters underwater. You have to break, your head has to break before the 5 meter rope. There is this 5 meter thread. So your head has to break the surface. So basically, instead of 35 meters netto swim, we do 47. So
Okay.
it's somewhat slower, but it makes it more
Hmm.
interesting. And so that's about the sprints. Now, the warning signs after the sprints, usually people come out like, yeah, celebrating either their result or their team or their friends. So that's a totally different story, because the adrenaline is still high. They don't really feel the temperature. They do feel it somewhat, of course, obviously, but it's a totally different game. But after the 1 kilometer and the 1.6, so the ice mile, it's already mandatory to have a second who only, he or she is there with you all the time in front of your lane. So you do, let's say it's a 1 kilometer, you do 50 meters, you do 10 laps, and after that you get out immediately. Sometimes your fingers are frozen, so I already had a 1K like this. It was really interesting. I couldn't move my finger. I tried to make it straight, and it came back all the time. And and then your second gives your clothes on you, or your dry robe. Tries to, if you can't move your goggle by yourself, then he or she moves your goggle and maybe even your cap. And then that's where the second part of the swim starts, which is really underestimated, but it's really, really important, where you have to fight basically with the afterdrop. What I just told you, that the whole fresh blood goes into your inner organs, to your trunk, to cover the organs. You need to pump it out back to the veins of your extremities and your legs. And there are different people with different techniques. Some people go in sauna, which I usually get dizzy from that, so I don't do it immediately. I usually do either running around the pool or wherever there is a free place and it's allowed, or I do some shadow boxing. I see some guys coming from karate, they do all these katas and everything. That's also really fun. Yeah, as I said, different people, different methods. And then what is really important, to get some, not hot, but some warm drink with sugar, so it gives you the energy back to the system, immediate energy. It's really important. And that's the long distance. And of course, you shake, so your fingers are like this all the time. If it stops shaking immediately, that's also a warning signal. Then you need to get a medic as soon as possible. And there are a bunch of videos when people are coming out from 1 kilometer and trying to drink like a tea. I think I have one from myself as well. I try to drink a tea and it pours all over. It's really funny. Yeah.
I can imagine it must be a strange sensation if you're not used to that. I have personal experience of doing water sports in very cold water, nowhere near as cold as you're familiar with, but just having control of your hands is very difficult. So I can imagine it can be quite painful as well when they start to warm back up.
Yes.
So just wanted to ask here, Daniel, you mentioned something earlier about the mile being like the holy grail for like ice swimmers.
Yeah.
Why is that, and how many people have actually ever completed that successfully?
That's the longest distance that the International Federation has. They usually don't do it in competitions. There are usually ice mile days, so you can register for an ice mile day. If you're lucky, you go with your buddies only. If you're even luckier, you go with an international environment meet with from all over the planet, whoever comes and registers. There is an ice sevens, I believe, that there are the 7 continents, including North Pole and South Pole, so Antarctica. And if you do the mile in each of those, then you get officially an ice 7, some sort of a sticker or something. And how many people did officially it? If someone goes to international ice swimming, I can't tell you the exact number because there is a lot. Seems like a crazy thing, but there's quite a lot of people involved in it, and the people who I think this whole ice swimming is addictive. So if you get into it once, then you want to challenge yourself, and then after 50 meters, you're like, I could do that last competition. Let's do 100. And then after 2 times 100, you're like, okay, but why do everyone tells me that sprints are not actually ice swimming? Let's do a 250, because there's also a rule in the International Ice Swimming Federation that you cannot go. You need to have the brackets checked. You cannot go from 100 meters to an ice mile. You need to have an official competition or an official day where you did the 250 and then the 500, and then so you elevate the levels. It's like in judo, you have the different kind of colors of belt. And
sure thing.
And well, it's also from a safety point of view, it makes sense, because if somebody starts with a 50 meter and it's guaranteed he or she can do it, but then jumps for an ice mile and at 900 meters something wrong happens, then we have a no-go situation. So and it's quite addictive. I know that from Hungary we are 7 people who did it already. Last year it was only 3 of us, luckily, and I can say proudly to all my company here that we grew to 7, and I'm hoping for another 10 at least. But everyone has to know their own limits, so it's a mind game, but it needs to be reasonable. And the mile is, I don't know, maybe it's just a rhythm or a rhyme with ice and mile, like the I and the E. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. I can recommend it to everyone out there.
It sounds really cool. And it's something which I think a lot of people listening might start looking into a lot more if they've never heard of it before.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people listening who are athletes and coaches from different action sports and adventure sports of all different standards. So we have a lot of developing youth athletes. We have a lot of high-level participation athletes, weekend warriors. We also have a lot of professional athletes listening as well. So how can the lessons from ice swimming transfer to other action sports, like particularly around like managing stress and staying composed under pressure?
Well, that's a really good question. So if I can recommend to my fellow athletes out there, if you want to gain stress tolerance, like or to expand your own limits, ice swimming, or not necessarily ice swimming, but if you don't know how to swim or you don't want to be a competitive level swimmer, you can also just do cold plunge as well. It works really, really well because the environment, which feels like chaos in the beginning, it becomes an everyday routine. So your original standpoints, which is like it can be chaotic and it's stressful, it changes your whole modules like on the daily level as well. So whenever someone tells me like this and this stressful thing happened, I'm like, all right, that's not really stressful. This is
yeah, sure.
It is like our warm up. So it causes a really good, and it makes you mentally tough. But I think generally in most of the sports, in every realm and every dimension, if you do it until a certain level, it makes you mentally tough. So it's not just ice swimming. It can be used as a tool, cold plunge as well. I read that it's also really good for recovery for strength athletes. So if you have like very high lactate levels, you can push it down a little bit. But as I said, generally it gives you mental toughness because it's you against nature, and you win basically just by getting in there. You win. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, well, that's a great take on it. I really like that. That's really cool. And I guess you've just got to try it, right? If you've never done it before, and then see how it feels. But the important thing is to start at the beginning, not race to the end if you're unfamiliar.
Yeah.
So what is the future then, Daniel, of ice swimming? Like, where is it currently now, and where's it going? And where would you ideally like to see it in the future?
Okay, so what I recognize as a pattern, it's growing rapidly. So if you check the last 7 World Championships, included the times when there was COVID, there was a World Championship. The numbers are constantly growing. The number of countries are constantly growing. The number of athletes are constantly growing. At the beginning, it was some sort of an master sport. So it was like, I don't know if I should use the word, but retired swimmers who were like masters or triathletes or open water swimmers who were already masters by their age. And now it's by now the juniors or just popping up like mushrooms after rain. And there is like the adult level from 18 to 25. They're just immediately broadening. So I tend to believe that need to observe the IOC rules and regulations, but I tend to believe that by 2030 or 2034, this can easily make it to the Winter Olympics. And once it's going to be involved in the Olympics, then it's going to be even bigger than before. What we do know is that obviously the winter athletes are a little fewer than in the summer athletes because of weather conditions, so you cannot participate. It's the same. Ice swimming is a segment sport. You cannot participate in a desert, for example, because where? But surprisingly, for example, Morocco has a really good ice swimming team because they have mountains up there, and there are some lakes in the altitude which are all year round cold. And also South Africa has a great ice swimming team, which by the name of the country, you're like, what, Africa? And then you realize, okay, but they are actually way down in the south, so the water is like really cold. The same with Chile and Argentina. I would never thought that from sunshiny South America there is a team from ice swimming, and then it turns out that down south in Patagonia they can actually train. So you never know. It's not just a Nordic people sport. At the beginning I thought so. I was like, okay, ice swimming, what is this? There's going to be Russia, Canada, Norway, maybe Denmark, and then it turns out there is much more than that. So it's growing, and it's growing fast. And I think it's also not just due to the wow effect of the sport that is new, something extreme and new, but also the psychological and physiological effects that it pumps you up with adrenaline and serotonin, so you feel really happy after the swim. And I think that's addictive. Yeah,
fantastic, very exciting, and watch this space, and hopefully we will see it grow and continue to grow and get the recognition it deserves. Daniel, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. If people listening would like to get in touch with you to find out more information, how can they do that?
So they can go to the internationaliceswimming.com, go to ISA members, then /Hungary, then I'm the only Daniel Patakfalvi, or they can find me on Instagram at Daniel Patakfalvi. But my last name is quite hard even for Hungarian, so what I would do is that probably under the podcast I just tag myself or something like that.
Yeah, and how do you actually say that correctly?
Patakfalvi.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. I'll put those links into the show notes so people can click directly and access those. But Daniel, thanks again for your time, and best of luck with all of this in the future.
Thank you. I hope I added some value for your audience. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the episode. If this conversation was useful, a rating and review on your listening platform helps more athletes and coaches access practical real-world performance insights. If you know someone training hard, navigating fatigue, dealing with inconsistency or recurring breakdown, share this episode with them. For more applied education, tools and coaching support, visit extremesportsperformance.com. Remember to train with intent, recover with purpose, and build performance that lasts. Until next time, go well and release your limits.